Welcome to History with Herodotus, where we delve into the vast expanse of human experience, navigating the intricate tapestry of time. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey through the age of Viking exploration, an era that would leave an indelible mark on the world. As we set sail across the uncharted waters of history, let us first immerse ourselves in the backdrop against which this age unfolded. In the early medieval period, Europe was a mosaic of tribes and kingdoms, each with its unique culture and traditions. The Roman Empire, once the epicenter of power and civilization, had begun to crumble, leaving behind a legacy that would influence the course of history for centuries to come. As the dust settled, new powers emerged, and among them, the Viking societies of Scandinavia began to stir. The Vikings, skilled craftsmen, fierce warriors, and adept traders, lived in what is now modern-day Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Their world was one of harsh climates and breathtaking landscapes, where the aurora borealis danced across the night sky and the fjords cut deep into the earth like giants' fingers. It was here, in this unforgiving yet majestic environment, that a distinct culture flourished, one that would soon propel its people onto the global stage. To understand the Vikings' rise to prominence, we must first glance at their origins. The Scandinavian societies were not static entities, but dynamic cultures that had been evolving over centuries. Archaeological findings have revealed a complex picture of migration, assimilation, and conflict which shaped these communities. The Vikings were descendants of the Norsemen, who had developed a sophisticated agricultural system, allowing for population growth and, subsequently, an increase in social complexity. As their societies grew more intricate, so did their political structures. Petty kingdoms and chieftainships emerged, often engaging in a delicate dance of alliances and rivalries. This period also saw the development of a rich cultural heritage, including a deep-seated belief in the Norse gods, whose stories would be passed down through generations in the form of sagas and poems. The Vikings' relationship with the sea was pivotal to their future endeavors. Living along the coastlines, they developed an intimate understanding of the tides, the winds, and the waves. Their ships, masterpieces of craftsmanship, would become the instruments of their exploration and conquest. The longship, with its shallow draft and symmetrical ends, could navigate both the open seas and the narrow fjords, making it an ideal vessel for the Vikings' ambitions. As the 8th century dawned, Europe was on the cusp of significant change. The Frankish kingdom, under the leadership of Charlemagne, was expanding its territories, creating a power vacuum that would draw in various tribes and kingdoms. Meanwhile, the British Isles were experiencing their own transformations with the arrival of Christian missionaries and the consolidation of Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. It was against this backdrop of political upheaval, cultural exchange, and technological advancement that the Vikings began to look beyond their horizons. Their initial forays into the wider world were often driven by a quest for resources, trade, and plunder. However, these expeditions would soon evolve into something more profound, a period of exploration that would take them to the farthest reaches of the known world and beyond. As the Vikings ventured beyond their Scandinavian homelands, they left an indelible mark on the history of Europe and beyond. One of the earliest recorded Viking raids was on the monastery at Lindisfarne, off the coast of Northumbria in England, which took place in 793. This event marked the beginning of a new era of Viking expansion as they targeted monasteries and towns throughout the British Isles, seeking riches and resources to bring back to their communities. The Vikings' mastery of the sea allowed them to launch surprise attacks on unsuspecting towns and villages, often catching their enemies off guard. In 795, they raided the monastery at Iona, a small island off the coast of Scotland, killing many of the monks and taking others as slaves. These early raids were often driven by a desire for plunder and riches, but they also marked the beginning of a period of Viking settlement and exploration that would last for centuries. As the Vikings continued to expand their reach, they began to establish trade routes and settlements throughout Europe. In 810, they founded the town of Hedeby in what is now modern-day Denmark, which would become a major hub of Viking trade and commerce. The town was strategically located at the intersection of several important trade routes, including the Baltic Sea and the North Sea, making it an ideal location for merchants and traders. The Vikings' trading network stretched from the Arctic Circle to the Mediterranean, and they traded goods such as furs, wool, and amber for silver, gold, and other precious commodities. In 840, the Viking trader and explorer Ottar sailed to the White Sea in what is now modern-day Russia, where he traded with the local Sami people and learned about their customs and way of life. One of the most significant events of the age of Viking exploration was the discovery of Iceland, which took place around 870. According to the Icelandic sagas, a Viking named Gunnbjörn Ulfsson stumbled upon the island while sailing from Norway to Greenland. The discovery of Iceland marked the beginning of a new era of Viking settlement and exploration, as many Vikings began to migrate to the island in search of land and resources. The Viking settlements in Iceland thrived, and the island became an important hub of Viking culture and learning. In 930, the Icelandic Althing, one of the oldest parliaments in the world, was established, marking the beginning of a new era of democratic governance in the region. The Althing was a gathering of chieftains and other prominent Icelanders who came together to settle disputes and make laws for the community. As the Vikings continued to explore and settle new lands, they also began to adopt new customs and practices. In 980, the Viking leader, Erik the Red, founded the first Norse settlement in Greenland, which he called Brattahlíð. The settlement was established near modern-day Qaqortoq, and it marked the beginning of a new era of Viking exploration and settlement in the North Atlantic. The Viking settlements in Greenland thrived for many centuries, and they became an important part of the Norse world. However, as the climate began to change and the ice sheets expanded, the Vikings were eventually forced to abandon their settlements in Greenland. The last recorded sighting of the Vikings in Greenland was in 1410, when a group of Icelandic sailors stumbled upon a Viking settlement near modern-day Nuuk. As the Viking settlements in Greenland were abandoned, the Norse world began to shift its focus towards more hospitable lands. The age of Viking exploration, which had begun with the raid on Lindisfarne in 793, was slowly coming to a close. However, the legacy of this era would continue to shape the course of European history for centuries to come. One of the most significant later events of this period was the Norman conquest of England in 1066, led by William the Conqueror, who was himself a descendant of Viking settlers in Normandy. The Normans, with their blend of Norse and French culture, brought a unique set of customs and traditions to England, which would have a lasting impact on the country's language, politics, and society. As the medieval historian Snorri Sturluson wrote, "The Vikings were not just plunderers and raiders, but also settlers and founders of new societies." This duality of the Viking character is reflected in the complex and often contradictory nature of their legacy. As the age of Viking exploration drew to a close, the Norse world was becoming increasingly integrated into the broader European landscape. The Viking settlements in Iceland, Greenland, and other parts of the North Atlantic were being absorbed into the emerging kingdoms of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. However, the cultural and linguistic heritage of the Vikings continued to shape the identity of these nations, and their influence can still be seen today in the languages, customs, and traditions of the Nordic countries. In modern times, the age of Viking exploration is remembered as a period of great upheaval and transformation, which had a profound impact on the course of European history. The Vikings are often celebrated as brave and intrepid explorers, who pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible and expanded the geographical horizons of the known world. As the Icelandic poet Egil Skallagrimsson wrote, "The sea is the Viking's road, and the wind is his companion." This sense of restlessness and wanderlust continues to captivate our imagination and inspires us to explore and discover new worlds. Today, the legacy of the age of Viking exploration can be seen in the many museums, historical sites, and cultural festivals that celebrate the history and heritage of the Norse world. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, remember that to understand the present, we must first understand the past.